Good morning and welcome out to the garden. I'm out for a couple of different reasons today, but most importantly, I have some overwintered cut flowers that I want to check on, see how they survived the winter now that all of our snow has melted. And I also have to do a lot of prep work for the planting that I can be doing as early as this coming weekend. And the overnight temperatures, while they've been really cold this past week, they are hovering around the freezing mark, slightly higher over the next 10 days or so. So that tells me it's safe to plant a lot of these things outside. So first we will go and open up the greenhouse. When it's not too windy or cold, the ranunculus spends the day outside. They are pretty well hardened off. Being in the greenhouse helps quite a bit with that already. This little shelf here is for the lisianthus. And some of them look pretty sad, but some of them are a really good size. This is only my second year attempting to grow lisianthus, so I'm pretty happy. If I get close to 100, I'll be really happy since I only had 13 plants last year. And with all that taken out of the greenhouse, here is what we have left. It's hard to imagine all that was in here, but the ranunculus were all up on these shelves. So what we have here to start is Godetia or Clarkia. These are the larkspur. On this second shelf here we have carnations, the fancy Chabot variety with a handful of bachelor's buttons there on the end. And then we have the bells of Ireland. I don't use a lot of these, so that one little tray is more than enough, but those seedlings are looking really good. And then we have an anemone and a handful of ranunculus just in pots. Those are going to go out on my deck. We have a lovely tray of snapdragons. These two crates have my first succession of stock. There's a couple more inside. And then those two crates over there are full of anemones. So the overwintered ranunculus are continuing to grow nicely, definitely slower than the ones we have in trays, but the soil temperature is warming up slower in the ground than it will be in the trays. And those two little rows of stalk, these are only here because they were what was left over after I planted the bulb crates. And that and the ranunculus are a big experiment this year, so I'll keep you all posted on how that turns out and how the blooms compare to the ones that I'm going to plant outside. So this greenhouse space is part of a very delicate balance of moving seedlings around. I really need to get a lot of these planted in the ground so that what is on my grow shelf can move out here into the greenhouse, so that what I planted the other day that is about to germinate can be moved under my grow lights. So I have limited space in all of these areas and so many more seeds to start. And the big job today is not only, keeping all these things alive, but I have to have a look at all these beds that I'm going to be planting first and get them ready for planting. And I need to tarp the beds or cover them to help them warm up a little bit before I actually plant into them. And that is the big one. That is what's most important. If you plant seedlings that have not been used to cold, wet soil and you stick them in the beds without warming them up, they're going to sulk. They're going to sit there and they're going to do nothing for at least a couple of weeks, which I think is what happened to my ranunculus last year. I did get a lot of blooms off them, but it was closer to mid-June when the first flush really came on strong. So in order to get them blooming earlier, I've got to get that soil temperature up before I plant out. This first bed here is completely empty. I'm still trying to decide what I'm going to plant there. And then we have potentially overwintered Rudbeckia. I didn't think Rudbeckia were going to survive our winter here, but believe it or not, there are some sprouts. The sun's in the way a little bit. There are two at the base of this plant, many at the base of this plant, and I'm actually seeing them everywhere. Oh, there's a good one. These are the Sahara Rudbeckia, and the cherry brandy is looking just as good. Now this I should open up to. These are overwintered carnations. They were grenadine mix. not sure I'm pronouncing that right, from Swallowtail Seeds in California. And unfortunately, the bunny's been chewing on those too. Luckily, it's not all of them, but hopefully they'll be okay. So we have those right next to the Rebecca. In the next row right here, we have yarrow. Yarrow always overwinters, no problem. Lots of nice green foliage starting to grow on those. I'm not going to cut back or take off the old leaves yet because they're still adding quite a bit of protection. So leaving it looking rough is better for the plant at this point in the spring still. And then in the next row, the larkspur is looking really good. I think I have somewhere in the range of 25 plants here, which was covered in mesh. I just uncovered it. It's been covered since I planted them in the fall, just to make sure that nothing dug them up. But as larkspur is toxic, I don't expect the bunny to be chewing on these. There's not a whole lot happening in the herb beds yet. There's a few shoots popping up and some garbage that I cleared out of the shed that I need to pick up. This bed was chives and I'm in the middle of taking most of them out because we do not need a 3x5 bed full of chives. This one, however, is feverfew. So same thing, there are a lot of beautiful green shoots coming out of there. You can't see them yet because of all the dead sticks on top. But I'm not going to take those off until the temperatures get just a little bit warmer because it's adding quite a bit of frost protection still to these little tiny shoots. And over here we have saffron crocus. The evergreen foliage is going to die back within the next couple of months and then they'll stay there until bloom time again in September. This one is oregano, which I also don't need a full bed of, but that's going to be quite difficult to get out. So I haven't really decided how I'm going to deal with that one yet. This one I believe is elephant garlic, and then the two on the end are my lilies that I planted for cutting, so those are going to be really great. And this one is the tarragon. Tarragon I don't use for cutting much. I use it just in the kitchen, and this is what I sold the most of at the market last year. So I do have a 3x5 bed full of tarragon, and I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to leave that also. That's going to be a wait and see. And this one by far is my largest growing space. This is 8 rows. But let's go have a look at the row on the far right. We do have some things overwintering in there. These are evergreen scallions. Can probably start harvesting and eating those anytime. Most of this is new growth this spring. I'm going to leave that for now. But in the rest of the row, let's see if we can find, there we go. This is columbine. There's some beautiful new growth right there. And some more, look at that. There is the delphinium. Beautiful. See if we can see another one. Yes, look at that. That is really exciting. The columbine and the delphinium I planted from seed last year, and the delphinium actually flowered a little bit in late fall. But those were planted for early spring flowers, and they're perennials. They're not just hardy annuals or biennials. Hopefully, I will be able to keep those alive and maybe move them to another spot. As of now, the rest of these are empty, and these are all permanent no-dig beds. They are 30-inch beds with 18-inch paths, and they need a little bit of weeding, but less and less so every year. I've come over to my yellow bench to finish my coffee before it gets cold for a moment and decide what I'm going to do first. I think the most important job is going to be tarping some beds, but I'm really bad at not planning ahead, and I haven't really decided which ones I'm going to do. I still don't know where I'm going to plant all that ranunculus, which is not great. For those of you new here, hi, I'm Nicole, and my garden is on the east coast of Canada, up in Nova Scotia. We are zone 6A, and I grow cut flowers for a local farmer's market. Not on a huge scale because I'm also a full-time piano teacher. I know I don't talk about that much because this is a garden channel, but I have 38 students, and that keeps me really busy. Mostly though, afternoon into evening. So now that the kids are in school, I find my daytime's mostly free. When they were younger, it was great because I was home during the day. We didn't have to put them into daycare, and my husband was able to look after them while I was teaching, and that was really great for us. But now that they're in school, the times that they are home are the times that I'm teaching. So I'm finding I don't really get to spend all that much time with them, and my husband is the one who has to drive them around to their activities in the evenings, which we don't do a lot of, but I really do need to cut back a little bit, and being a passionate gardener, doing something for the local farmers market was very natural. So for 2 years I grew and sold just cut herbs, culinary herbs at the market. And I really loved that, but it's a bit of a specialty thing and you just can't sell enough really to make it worthwhile. So 2 years ago, I started selling cut flowers as well. And I made the decision over this past winter to cut out the herbs completely. So I'm going to be a 100% cut flowers at the farmer's market, but I think I'm going to do an edible option. I still have so many herbs that I'm growing. I would like to make a bouquet that is made up of herbs and edible flowers. So that is going to be part of my plan this year and hopefully make my herb customers happy as well. I did have a handful of people who came every week and would buy a couple different things, and they were really excited to find fresh herbs at the farmer's market because most of your farmers won't bring them because they don't make enough money. So rather than dropping them completely, I'm going to try to work them into the flower side of the business. So I really have to get to work here because I just checked the time and I have exactly an hour before my lessons start. All right, back to work. As another little side note, could it be possible that cilantro survives its own 6th winter? Because I'm pretty sure this one did. There's the start of our 1100 tulips. These ones are a little bit further along. I'm sure they'll be blooming first. These are covered with mesh because of certain bunnies that we did catch, and then it somehow managed to escape again. So, speak of the bunny. Do you see that? Oh, there he goes. Right next to the apple tree he killed. Bozo. He's lucky he's cute. Doesn't realize how much money he's been costing me. Let's check the daffodils. Daffodils tend to bloom a little earlier than tulips. Let's just peek under this mesh. Oh, look at that. These daffodils are going to get moved once the foliage dies back. So they've been in this bed for 2 years now, but this is prime real estate and they need to go somewhere else so that I can use this again this summer. So I've decided on 3 spots that I'm going to cover in preparation for planting in the next couple of days. And one is this bed here. I've been using these for years. These are unbent metal coat hangers. So there's a good lesson in using what you have right there. I'm going to do one bed here, the other empty bed over on the other side, and then a couple of rows up in the upper garden. Actually, I changed my mind. No, I didn't. This is just going to serve to leave a little bit of air space. I do find having a little air under there helps retain the heat just a little bit more than sitting directly on the soil. Oh, it's almost a perfect length. Oh, giant worm. So this is going to do a couple of things. It's going to warm up the soil, first of all. It's going to keep it from getting soggy and waterlogged if we get heavy rain before I plant out. And in warming up the soil, it's also going to stimulate some weed seeds that might be on the surface to grow so that I can get rid of them before planting time. Not to say that they'll all germinate, but it'll help. So when I get these 2 beds planted, that means that this entire cutting garden will basically be full. And the last spot that I want to do is these 2 rows here. That one has my delphiniums and my columbine. And I like to get these 2 also. These are the ones that get the most sun in early spring. And I had snapdragons, actually they're still there. The next 2 rows over, the front half of them has snapdragons from last year that I did not take out. I just cut them back. I need rocks. There are a few weeds growing in these beds, not a whole lot. I'm interested to see if the black plastic will kill those off. This is not ideal, but I'm definitely a fan of using what we have, so not ideal is still much better than nothing. All right, So my plan has always been to have one of these gardens be a kitchen garden and then the other one to be a cutting garden. But the reality is I just plant things in whatever bed is ready when they are ready to go out, and it always ends up being a bit mixed up. This upper garden up here is definitely the biggest in-ground garden. There are 8 rows in all and they are about 20 feet long. Whereas this one has only 7 rows and they're somewhere between 8 and 10 feet. But we do have 8 small raised beds here. These ones are 3 by 5. And then just over there are 5 more raised beds that are 8 by 4. These ones were the perennial herbs, but we've already talked about that being changed this year. And I've already showed you the tulips and daffodils. Those 3 back there. The furthest one is daffodils. The next 2 are tulips, and this one is empty. There goes the bunny again. And then the one over on its own is all garlic. It is so warm and sunny here. It's just gorgeous. Bad for filming, but it's a beautiful early spring day. So it's only a couple of degrees above freezing, so the sun is really welcome. I think the last thing I'm going to do is water that ranunculus, and then I might be done for the day. And that is pretty much it for my work day, except for having to come out later before dark and close up the greenhouse. Everything goes back in, and most of the time I throw a frost cloth over everything as well. The greenhouse probably stays close to 3 to 5 degrees warmer than the outside temperature. Of course, depending on how windy it is, that's always a big factor. And if it's going to be below freezing, I always put frost cloth over everything just to be on the safe side. It can definitely handle freezing temperatures, everything that's out there now, because it's all frost tolerant. But a lot of cold temperatures is going to slow down their growth, which is what we don't want. So that's going to do it for today, and we'll be back out in the garden within a couple of days to get hopefully most of these things planted out in those spaces that we tarped today. So have a fantastic day, and I will see you then.